I believed the official story too until I saw this myself. Mechanisms in coal seams millions of years old, mummified bodies that seem to be from another world, sarcophagi with imprints of unknown beings, artifacts that even scientists are afraid to explain. All of this is not fiction but real discoveries that have undergone examination, yet have been forgotten or lost. We have gathered them together, only what has been confirmed, only what shatters the old picture of the world. Hello, my friend. You're on the Kurtop channel. Diamond Needle Anabar. In the spring of 2014, at the Anabar Placer in northern Yakutia, Russia, a gold prospector noticed not an ordinary grain of sand in his pan, but a tiny transparent needle, the length of a pinky fingernail. Diamonds usually form with facets, but this one was a flawless cylinder with no edges. The find was nicknamed the sewing needle of the dinosaur era. At the Yakutsk Institute, laser spectroscopy and an electron microscope confirmed the sample was a diamond. They also found a thin titanium nitride film, cobalt traces, and a protective layer typical of chemical vapor deposition, grown synthetic crystals. The alloy markings revealed the source. In the late 1990s, the Yakutsk Research Institute created diamond thermocouple probes to measure steel temperatures in smelting ladles. During testing, one probe cracked and the fragment was discarded. Spring floods slowly washed it into old clay, where the prospector found it. Scientists soon found its true origin, but the story became a myth. Every spring, gold diggers hoped to discover a similar artifact once again. The Black Knight satellite. They say that for 13,000 years, a mysterious black knight has been watching our planet. The legend combines Tesla's 1899 radio echo, a 1954 article about unknown satellites, and a 1998 space transportation system, 88 photo of a black triangle over Earth, suggesting an alien sentinel in polar orbit. However, each element was explained by earthly causes. The echo signal is explained as a quirk. The 1954 satellites were actually a journalistic exaggeration, and the ominous silhouette in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration footage is just a thermal insulation blanket, lost by the astronauts, registered as debris number 025570, which burned up in the atmosphere a few days later. Nevertheless, the myth lives on every time an amateur telescope catches the glint of space debris. The night's shadow crosses the night sky again, showing how foil can become a guardian of alien secrets. Editor Semkin. Crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made from solid rock, crystal appeared. No mention of excavations. Just mysterious sellers claiming these were Maya relics that sang under the moon and opened doors to other worlds. The legend was soon filled with details. They said there are exactly 13 such skulls, that together they project a map of the stars or hold messages about vanished celestial mentors. Mediums claim the crystal resonates with brainwaves, decoding ancient wisdom. And modern lithotherapy masters sold activation sessions at the price of a piece of jewelry. In the 1990s, the British Museum and Smithsonian Institution used a scanning electron microscope on the most famous skulls, revealing marks from a diamond-coated rotating tool. Such a tool would only appear after the 1860s. Also, the quartz structures don't have internal dish-shaped cracks, which would have formed if the skulls were hand-polished with sand. This means the artifact was almost certainly made with a modern machine. But one skull, supposedly found in Belize before the flood of mass-produced fakes, still confuses the experts. No purchase receipt or archaeological protocol, just previous owners' stories. They claim the crystal was polished for centuries, using water drops, quartz dust, and Maya craftsmen's patience. Scientists are nearly sure they have a later copy, but allow for a slight chance otherwise. What if this really is the work of ancient hands? We still haven't determined which tool was used to create it. Wolfsegg iron cube, Austria, 1885. A worker splits a piece of brown coal, and from the black lump rolls out a tiny iron cube with smooth edges and grooves as if made by a lathe. The newspapers instantly dubbed the find Stone Age bolts. Since the coal was found in layers estimated to be over 20 million years old. The cube ended up in the Salzburg Museum, where it was discovered that it wasn't pure iron, but cast iron with a high carbon and slag content, a type of alloy typical for 19th century blast furnaces. A small tail marks the spot where molten metal exited the casting mold. Under a microscope, the surface is covered with porous chamber-like rust, just like blast furnace slag. A piece of waste accidentally got into the coal cart and went down into the seam with it. And yet, looking at the almost perfect surfaces of the cube, visitors remark that the geometry is just too precise for a random fragment. What if it's a part of an unknown mechanism that nature hid deep within the rock, a flint hand drill? In the early 1960s, a farmer near Kankakee, Illinois, unearthed a strange object while digging a basement, a flint rod tightly encircled by a stone ring, resembling a modern bearing. The photo appeared in every newspaper's Forbidden Artifacts section, and the find was soon called the Flint hand drill. It's claimed Native Americans had advanced drilling technology before steel existed. Legend has it that the ring rotated freely without wearing down the mounting, a sign of polishing on the tool as good as diamond. VG. The artifact was never examined by experts, and after the owner's death, it disappeared into a private collection. Museums and inventories only have ordinary microdrills. Small flint tips once used to drill shells and bone. Archaeologists who viewed the original photo think the drill might be a fragment of a 19th century clay pipe worn smooth over time. Until the stone is examined microscopically, the story persists. It will keep filling online catalogs with so-called out-of-place artifacts. Let me remind you how easily a single unclear photo can turn into proof of prehistoric drilling tools. In 2002, archaeologists unearthed a wooden wheel with a diameter of 70 centimeters, along with an oak axle, in the Slavic swamps of the Lublin Marsh, in the village of Leda. Radiocarbon analysis dated it at 5,100 to 5,350 years old, older than Sumerian carts and any official school chart date for the wheel's invention. The design stands out for its simple, mature style. Two maples joined with oak pegs, charred along the rim, likely fired for strength, suggesting the craftsman already knew the techniques and upkeep. At first, many bloggers were sure that the discovery rewrites history, claiming that European hunter-fishermen from Neolithic pile-dwelling villages were ahead of Mesopotamia. Scientists approached the discovery calmly. The dating has been confirmed, but the maple disc may have been part of a simple lift for fishing nets or a two-wheeled cart, and not a wheel for a large wagon at all. Even such a modest option is important. It means that people could have come up with the idea of the wheel at least twice independently of each other. The artifact is now displayed at the Ljubljana City Museum. Tourists touch the blackened rim and wonder which wooden planks it once rolled over, and if more complex mechanisms from that Neolithic village remain hidden in the swamp. Continued. The glass desert of Libya. Glass. Continued. In the Sahara's center, dunes abruptly become yellow-golden shards, as if a giant city of bottles melted here. The first Europeans on the Berlin African expedition route in 1932 believed these were just old Bedouin campfires. But when geologist Patrick Clayton picked one up, there was no soot. The purest glass, almost 99% silica, transparent like Bohemian crystal. Later, Egyptologists found the same mineral in Tutankhamun's chest. His funerary scarab was carved from this mysterious glass. The intrigue developed quickly. Some mentioned a sand-based thermonuclear blast from a distant civilization, while others suggested a comet impact that liquefied the dunes. Rumors grew due to the unusually pure chemical composition, unlike that of a typical volcanic eruption. Modern analysis revealed a straightforward but still impressive story. About 29 million years ago, a city block-sized meteor exploded over the desert. The air reached 2,000 degrees and the pressure fell so fast that the sand foamed and ignited like sugar under a blowtorch, then quickly cooled, forming a huge glass avalanche. Zircon and badolite crystals in the fragments typically form from the intense heat of an impact explosion. Everything adds up except for one thing. A crater from the meteorite or explosion remains unfound, and scientists still debate if it was a meteor airburst or if the crater vanished beneath the sands. Each shard glinting in the sun among the dunes reminds us the sky can burn so brightly it leaves a desert of natural glass. The Leedskalnin mechanism, Florida 1930s, a short immigrant from Latvia named Edward Leedskalnin. He alone carved and moved more than 1,000 coral limestone blocks, some weighing up to 30 tons, to build what tourists call the Coral Castle. He worked at night, allowed no onlookers, and claimed he had discovered the secret of the pyramid builders. There were rumors that Ed moved the monoliths with the power of his mind or by acoustic levitation. Local school children claimed they saw the blocks floating smoothly in the air after Leedskalnin's death. Researchers found a tripod made from telephone poles, a chain hoist, pulleys on truck axle bearings, and a handwritten notebook with lever moment calculations at the site. The master applied classic roller balance, counterweights, patience, and a precise center of gravity. Each stone was chosen so that it could be rolled, not lifted. All this explains how he built it, but it doesn't quench our curiosity. The 9-ton gate mounted by him on a single metal pin can still be turned with a finger, while the mechanism stays hidden deep in the rusted bearing. Visitors keep wondering if the self-taught Latvian knew something that engineers have forgotten over the centuries. Gaston's tooth. In 1971, French amateur paleontologist Gaston Leroux found a perfectly preserved human molar while sifting through Pliocene pebbles on the Loire shore. The layer was dated to 3 million years ago, long before the appearance of the genus Homo. That meant he supposedly had proof of a lost humanity that lived side by side with saber-toothed tigers. Newspapers discussed a pre-human civilization, and esotericists linked the discovery to the Atlanteans, and Leroux himself gave tours and showed the enamel under a magnifying glass, saying, "Where else would you see such early tooth decay?" When the sample arrived at the Sorbonne lab, the X-ray revealed a simple truth. It was a modern human tooth, but it was covered with concentric layers of calcite, which embedded it into the Pliocene pebble. Based on strontium isotopes, the tooth fell out a few centuries ago, dissolved in river water, and settled in an old marine deposit, where it nearly turned to stone. The scientific verdict cooled the sensation, but didn't kill the myth, because if one tooth passed through time, who knows? Maybe real fossilized skulls of unknown people are still waiting deep below. We just haven't dug them up yet. Oklo Nuclear Reactor, Gabon, 1972. A French lab receives uranium ore and finds uranium-235 depleted by half, as if the fuel had already been used. The news spreads around the world with shocking information that an ancient nuclear power plant is hidden beneath the African jungle. Scientists hurry to the site and drill many wells. The resulting picture is surprising but earthly. 2 billion years ago, there was a rare combination of conditions here: uranium-rich rock, water-bearing sandstone, and groundwater that slowly flowed through the ore. Water slowed the neutrons and triggered a chain reaction, which stopped when it boiled. After cooling, the layer refilled with water. Again and again, the reactor would switch on and off for hundreds of thousands of years, leaving behind a distinctive set of rare isotopes. No human-made nuclear plant or alien intervention, just a natural geochemical reactor formed by chance. But the story of Oklo still grabs your attention. The planet can build nuclear reactors without engineers, needing only uranium, water, and time. Tatar screws. In 1996, local geologists examined an abandoned quarry near the village of Kucherova in Tatarstan and split open a sandstone boulder. Inside, they found a finger-length metal bolt with a clear thread on the shaft. The photo soon appeared in newspapers, alleging prehistoric technology was preserved in Jurassic stone. The legend grew popular. Rumors spread of a hidden mine with nuts and washers, and a worker claimed the bolt's thread matched an M8. The Kazan University of Metallurgy found nothing when the sample was sent. The bolt was actually a limestone core filled with iron minerals. Under the microscope, the thread became discs, identical segments of an ancient sea lily, crinoid, a fragment trapped in silt millions of years ago and mineralized with the sand. Paleontologists worldwide know these screw-like stems. Split across, they appear as perfect washers, split along as spirals. Science has explained everything except the stone with the bolt. At the school museum under a Mystery of Nature sign, the tour guides smile. A single blurry photo can make a multi-million-year-old crinoid seem like part of an unknown mechanism, prompting bloggers and pseudo-scientific archaeologists from the mine to try rewriting history again for launching rockets. In Laos's Shanghai province, thousands of person-sized stone jars with walls up to half a meter thick are scattered around. Local legends say giants used these goblets to brew rice wine after defeating demons. The first French explorers of the 19th century were puzzled. No lid, some pots have gravel bottoms, and some are carved from granite taken dozens of kilometers away. After World War II, the legend spread. American pilots mistook the jar fields for stone rockets and bombed them. Excavations in the 2016 S and 2020s explained the finds, but left several questions unanswered. Skeletons, glass beads, and bronze discs were found around some jars, evidence of Iron Age burial rituals from about 500 before Christ to 500 AD. Apparently, the bodies decomposed in the open air before their bones were placed in these large urns. How the inhabitants carved these massive jars and moved them across mountains remains a mystery. No metal chisel marks appear on the rocks, and the polishing looks like it was done with giant sandpaper. Now we know their ritual role, but we don't know the hands and tools that gave these boulders the shape of a perfect jar. Klerksdorp spheres, white ken, riding convole. In the mines near South African Klerksdorp, miners occasionally dig up tiny spheres of dark stone that are perfectly round, with black parallel grooves along the equator, as if they were shaped on a lathe. The host rock is about 3 billion years old, and that's why a theory quickly appeared on the internet that these are gears from prehistoric machines or souvenirs from aliens. When geologists opened a few spheres, they saw alternating pyrite and hematite rings inside, layer by layer. Minerals formed around a sand grain as ancient seafloor sediments were compressed. The grooves aren't carvings, but traces of crystal growth and rock compression. Soft pyrophyllite compressed around the spheres, leaving furrows. So the mystery is a rare but natural mineralization process. Everything else is just imagination sparked by the perfectly round shape, which nature sometimes creates just as well as a master craftsman. The Shigir idol in Russia. In 1890, workers were extracting peat from the Shigir bog in the Urals. Instead of roots, they raised a pine log carved with zigzags, lines, and 7 strange masks facing different directions. The first radiocarbon testing in the 1990s already gave a staggering 9,500 years, and after a repeat accelerator mass spectrometry analysis in 2021, the age increased to 12,100 years. That's twice as old as Stonehenge and the pyramids. The acid-rich bog preserved the layer better than a sarcophagus. The wood even retained traces of flint tools that people in the Stone Age used to carve on living pine trees. Everyone interprets the pattern on the idol differently. Some say the horizontal notches divide the layer into 3 worlds, and the 7 faces are spirits guarding each level. Others read the zigzags as a timeline, showing the tribe's journey from the bottom up after the glacier melted. Another theory is that it's a star map, resembling a summer constellation over the Urals from thousands of years ago. But the real question is, why was the statue broken, sunk in a swamp, and weighed down with stones? If it was just an ordinary totem, there would be no need to destroy it. Perhaps the ritual required killing the idol. To begin a news cycle, scientists only know one method: heating silicon blades to burn through wood, then scraping the lines smooth. X-rays now detect hundreds of marks under the bog's dense crust, but their purpose is still unknown. No nearby settlements or similar figures exist. It's as if the creators concealed their era's main work, leaving us only a solitary fragment of unknown history. The Ergek Ring. In 1984, at the Ergek coal mine in Kuzbass, Russia, miners cut through a layer of coal about 40 million years old and found a thin gold ring inside. A stylized bunch of grapes is depicted on the rim as if it were an ancient piece of work, and the inner surface is polished so smoothly that it reflects the light from the miners' lamps. The newspapers quickly reported on pre-flood jewelry found alongside ancient rhinoceroses. When the find was brought to the surface, there were even more surprises. The metal turned out to be an alloy of gold. Gold with platinum, a recipe known only since the late 19th century. Geologists provided their own version of past events. At the end of the 19th century, a cave-in at this mine caused a miner's ring and some clay to get stuck in a crevice, and the high pressure and heat of the seam baked it into the coal like raisins in a cake. But one thing remains strange even decades later. The microscope reveals a flawless mirror-like coating on the surface, with no wear, as if the ring had rested in a vacuum for millions of years. They sealed the ring behind glass at the mine entrance, and now every new shift stops to touch the display before entering. What if this ring is actually part of a story we haven't uncovered yet? Ancient gramophone records. In 1938, Chinese archaeologist Chipu Te explored a cave in Bayankara Ula and found perfectly shaped stone gramophone records. Each palm-sized disc had a central hole and a spiral groove on the front. Under a magnifying glass, tiny hieroglyphs appeared in the groove. The text describes the Dropa, a small people who crashed in the mountains after coming from a distant star 12,000 years ago. The legend soon gained details. They spoke of 716 discs of a storage facility at Beijing University, and of one of them emitting a pure, almost musical electric impulse during an experiment. However, when ethnographers searched for the artifacts, they found none in Chinese museums, and only magazine clippings from the 1960s showed photos of the discs. And the translation of the hieroglyphs turned out to be the work of a German reporter, Reinhard Wegerer, who later admitted that he relied on stories from local guides without access to the original. Archaeologists from Gansu and Sichuan only know of Neolithic savannas with round burial slabs featuring shallow spirals. There is neither microtext nor cosmic chronicle, yet the story endures. Every time a simple stone disc is found in some cave, people on social media ask, what if this is one of the lost Dropa records? No genuine disc like that has been shown publicly yet. Imagination keeps spinning, as if the spiral on the stone itself is creating a new legend of the Mohenjo-Daro ring. During the excavation of the ancient city in the 1920s, archaeologists found several bronze rings just 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Under a magnifying glass, tiny marks appeared on their inner surface, like 4 or 5 lines of text, as if Yin civilization's craftsmen could write finer than a human hair. 80 years later, the rings were examined with an electron microscope. It turned out that some of the scratches really do match individual characters of the Yin script, but the rest of the markings are just random dents. Over time, crystals of copper and arsenic formed on the bronze, and corrosion created the appearance of a solid surface. The inscriptions based on the ring's shape were amulet stamps used to imprint signatures in clay or fabric, and over time, the surface wore down into a misleading pattern. However, the idea of Inda nanowriting persisted. Every time another bronze ring falls out of the sifted earth, researchers pick up the microscope. Suddenly, this very ring could feature a genuine microscopic inscription instead of corrosion scratches. The Aswan Unfinished Obelisk. In a granite quarry near Aswan lies a gigantic obelisk blank, almost 42 meters long, and weighing about 1,200 tons. Ancient craftsmen had already leveled the side faces. All that remained was to cut the slab from below and move it to the Nile. But a crack appeared in the stone, and the work was abandoned. Tool marks are visible to the naked eye, long grooves like those from a modern cutter and round hollows where the rock was broken with crushing blows. Mystery fans believe only a diamond, on a saw or an unknown energy beam, could make such a smooth cut. This suggests the temple builders had technology that vanished with Atlantis. Archaeologists have a simpler answer. The Egyptians used spherical dolerite hammers. Thousands of strikes with hard dolerite pressed the granite's quartz grains in, creating a smooth groove. Wooden wedges were then inserted, soaked with water, and as they swelled, they expanded and split off a slab. Gentle vibrations created smooth lines, much like a modern chisel. Calculations show that with a team of 100 stonemasons, a block could be freed in a few months. A crack rendered it unusable, halting the project. Today, the unfinished piece stands as a museum exhibit, preserving the pharaoh's ambitions and Bronze Age technology. Some see it as evidence of lost knowledge, others as a textbook on ancient engineering. But both perspectives agree on one thing: moving such a giant required precise calculation and tremendous patience, not a miracle. Glozal tablets. France, 1924. 17-year-old farmer Emile Frodon is plowing a field and comes across a stone ring, and underneath it, clay tablets, bones, and beads. The tablets feature short lines with hundreds of odd symbols, some similar to the Phoenician alphabet, some like runes, and others entirely different. The teachers in the village of Glozal insist that the discovery doesn't fit into any textbook, while the local elders say that there used to be a Templar chapel here. Archaeologists get more confused as they excavate. In one pit, they discover an 18th century iron knife, a Neolithic flint scraper, and a mysterious tablet. The debates have continued for nearly a century. Some experts think the layer is just an old dump where people discarded things for centuries, while others suspect a forgery. Someone may have planted items to attract attention to the village. Thermoluminescent tests in the 1970s showed some tablets were fired 2,000, 3,000 years ago, while others were fired just a few centuries ago. The original collection appears ancient, but someone added newer copies. The mystery is twofold. We can't read any signs, nor do we know who mixed eras in the hoard. But thanks to this confusion, Glozal has turned into an open-air museum where the past and forgery stand side by side, forcing everyone to decide which fragment of history to consider genuine. The Ark of the Covenant. In Axum, Ethiopia, behind the Church of St. Mary, locals say the true Ark of the Covenant, a gold-covered acacia chest with carrying poles and winged figure lid, is guarded. Only one guardian monarch is allowed to enter the sanctuary. All that pilgrims see is a dark silhouette under a veil, and stories about lightning that flashes if someone touches it without a blessing. Some enthusiasts interpret the Ark's description as a primitive electrical device, a gold-lined wooden box resembling a capacitor, with the ornate wings on top easily imagined as contacts. People have tried creating similar models today and managed to generate a weak voltage from static charge. Skeptics claim the Ark is essentially the same size as a typical portable scroll box. The sparks pilgrims mention may have been caused by static electricity in the dry mountain air. These theories can't yet be verified. No one has opened the relic, and X-rays and wood analysis are prohibited while the debates continue. Behind the closed door, there might be an ordinary reliquary or a device with an unknown purpose. The Fuente Magna Bowl is on the slope of the Bolivian Calapullo Ridge, not far from Lake Titicaca. In the late 1950s, a farmer dug up a heavy stone bowl almost half a meter in diameter. Outside, there's a typical Andean ornament. Inside, two carved zones appear, the upper with stylized llamas and wavy patterns, and the lower unexpectedly covered with small symbols, enthusiasts quickly identified as Sumerian cuneiform. Thus, the legend of Mesopotamia meeting the Andes was born. The sailors of Ur brought the sacred vessel across the ocean 3,000 years before Columbus. At the University of La Paz, microscope examination of the bowl revealed wedges, uneven lines, and many symbols cut off midway, suggesting the craftsman copied the signs from a drawing without understanding their endpoints. Geologists noted the stone is local volcanic tuff, with chisel marks typical of 20th century tools. The inner surface is covered with a thin honey-colored patina, which is hardened varnish made from tree resin, popular among Bolivian self-taught restorers in the first half of the last century. It appears to be an amateur forgery or tourist souvenir mistakenly labeled as an ancient artifact. But the bowl remained on the list of mysteries. The Andean and Sumerian patterns are too cinematic to vanish, so they remain on a separate shelf in the Tiahuanaco Museum, as a reminder that sometimes a single exotic pattern is enough to connect two continents of myths spanning an ocean. The Column of Shock. In Delhi, India, a 7-meter iron column has stood in the Qutb Minar courtyard for 1,500 years. The metal is dark but almost without rust, just a thin brown film like varnish. Legend has it that if you wrap your arms around the pillar, your wish will come true. Some claim the column was made using a recipe from heavenly blacksmiths. What's unusual is that regular iron in India develops a reddish coating within a few seasons, but here everything is intact. The material has been studied repeatedly, and it turned out that the shaft is welded from hundreds of strips of wrought iron with a high phosphorus content and almost no sulfur. When rain slightly corrodes the surface, the phosphorus reacts and forms a dense passive film that blocks oxygen better than any paint. The column was rotated so the phosphorus-rich metal side faced the midday sun, allowing the protective film to form faster due to the warmth. So the durability of the pillar is not a miracle, but a fortunate mix of ore and the precise calculation of craftsmen who knew how to properly position their creation. Still, the pillar seems out of place among the rusty railings and staircases. A tourist touches the cold metal, unaware of the phosphorus oxides. But scientists question how 5th century blacksmiths lacking blast furnaces and labs created a composition that lasted 10 times longer than themselves. The answer is clear, but the magic of iron remains. A carpet from permafrost? In 1949, archaeologists opened an ancient Scythian burial mound in the Altai Mountains and found a real surprise inside, a carpet. A woven dark red carpet featuring horsemen and horses. It seemed like it hadn't sat there for 2,500 years, but only a few winters in Grandma's chest. Nearby are a wooden cart, decorated harness, golden animal figurines, a felt tapestry, and a tattooed man's body, all remarkably well preserved. Nature holds the secret. The tomb was dug slightly deeper. Layers of permafrost and meltwater in the spring soaked everything inside, later turning into ice. On top, they piled a dense mound of stones, which kept the ground from thawing even in summer. It became a natural refrigerator, preserving wood fibers without air for thousands of years. The nomads' motives remain unclear. Perhaps they believed that the soul of the deceased should return to an incorruptible body, or maybe they just wanted to preserve the chief's home in perfect condition. The carpet still amazes people. Its knots are finer than Persian carpets, its colors bright, and its technique so delicate that one wonders where and how they learned to make it. Nanospirals from the Naroda River. In the 1990s, while washing for gold on the Naroda River, gold prospectors began to find strange fragments, tiny metal spirals, 1 to 3 millimeters long and up to 0.1 millimeters thick. Under a microscope, the coils looked clearly defined, like a tiny bolt. Spectral analysis showed almost pure tungsten with traces of molybdenum. Refractory metals, not naturally shaped this way, were found in rocks from Pleistocene glacial deposits. If the layer is ancient, the spirals have been there for thousands of years. They also mention nanotechnologies from a prehistoric civilization, claiming these are remnants of unknown mechanisms, probes, or tools. It was later discovered that Soviet-era geological exploration in the river's upper reaches used tungsten teeth in drilling crowns. When they wore out, they broke off, rolled into the ravines, and landed in the riverbed. There, current and sand shaped them into spirals, and their ancient age was linked not to the fragments, but to the sedimentary layers they landed in. Most scientists now think they are man-made shavings, but the precise shape still raises doubts. We can pretend that nothing happened, that these are just mistakes, coincidences, or tricks of nature. If any of these discoveries are real, our history is incomplete, and the most interesting part may still be unwritten. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.